my name's Christia. I am a PhD student at the Centre for Appearance Research at the University of the West of England in Bristol. Now, my PhD is researching online interventions for people affected by burn injuries. I'm almost at the end of it. I'm around 2.5 years in. I finish next June. And the Centre for Appearance Research has two branches. We have the body image branch and we have the visible difference branch. And we look at things such as the impact of social media on body image. We work with military veterans about limb loss and dealing with a visible difference as a result of war. We work with people who have had cancer and the impact of breast cancer operations and nipple tattooing and scar concealment and all these different things. So just a bit of a background about the centre where I work. So I'm here today to speak to you about the psychological impact of scarring and altered body image. I'll be telling you a bit about the impact of the psychosocial issues related to scarring, and I'll introduce you to some resources which may be beneficial to you and your patients. I've also included some video clips from people with real life experiences of burn injuries speaking about their own difficulties with appearances. So I'm aware that a lot of this you probably may already know, you'll have an understanding of. So I'm seeing it as a bit more of a refresher course and to also introduce you to some options that you could signpost your patients to if you're not aware of them already. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we all have scars. I'm sure that every single one of us will have a scar somewhere on our body. Scars are evidence of how our lives have lived and reminders of our experiences and what our bodies have endured. So I don't know one person who has gone through life to this point unscathed by a scar. So if you look at the little diagram on the screen, I just did a quick mock-up of any scars that I have on my body of any kind of significance. So I have a scar on my nose, for example, from an accident when I was 3 years old with an ironing board, which was quite strange. I ended up going to court with Argos. So just a quick example of, they tell the story of our lives, they provide insight into what's happened. Maybe you fell off your bike when you were younger, and every time you look down at your knee, you're reminded of the time you went way too fast on your bike down a hill. The point is that scars can affect all of us and do affect all of us, but it's the extent to which they affect us which can be different. Next slide, please. So what do we know? Definition and prevalence of the psychosocial impact of scarring. So living with scarring or another form of a visible difference can make life more difficult to navigate. We know that people with a visible difference are much more likely than the general public to experience appearance concerns. What we also know, however, is that the size or object severity, so how severe a scar is deemed to be, or a burn injury specifically, does not necessarily predict a person's body image or their perception of themselves. So the bigger the scar doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to cope worse with their altered appearance and how they perceive themselves. Sometimes it's the case that people with a bigger and more visible scars are better at adjusting to and living with their visible difference than people whose scars are smaller and easier to conceal. Now, there are theories that this is related to a concept called post-traumatic growth, where an individual exhibits personal growth and an acceptance of themselves more so after their injury than before. So the kind of theory behind this is that the more trauma a person experiences, the more growth that they display afterwards. Now, obviously, this is not the case for everyone, and it should always be taken on a case-by-case basis. And of course, post-traumatic growth and any kind of acceptance after a traumatic injury such as a burn is not an overnight transformation. Accepting scars and altered appearances takes time. And just anecdotal evidence in the research I've conducted with people with burns, people reflected on how their burns have now become an integral part of them. It's become part of their identity. and they spoke about how their scars are beautiful. One person even spoke about how their scars are kind of a filter as to whether someone is a good person or not, that if they judge their scars, they're obviously not a good partner, they're not going to be a good friend, they're not going to be a good colleague. Now, obviously, this is not the case for everyone, and, you know, on a case-by-case basis, but it's important to understand that some people do come to accept and sometimes embrace their scars. And I'm going to show you a clip of a lady called Rochelle, and she was burnt in a house fire when she was 18 months old. And so this is a clip of her speaking about her journey to self-acceptance. Now, if you have the next slide, please, it should just play automatically.
So it's not something that happens overnight, like accepting how you feel and the way you look, and especially when you've got media and celebrities looking a type of way and everyone thinking that's the norm and that's how you should look, and anything different isn't right and it's just weird or you're ugly or evil, according to these horror movies where you only see burnt people. Yeah, it's definitely a journey. I think now in the space that I am, I think I look freaking amazing. I go out with no makeup on whatsoever, and I literally do not care what people say. Like, I'm just in love with the way my skin looks, like the different colours, the different tones, the textures, the shapes. I've got the rarest diamonds in the world on my shoulder and other bits of skin graft that creates different textures, and like just skin in general. It's just so amazing what it can do and how it looks like and how it changes, like different weathers. In the sun, you go a bit more golden, you go a little bit pale in the winter, but depending on preference, you might love a bit of summer more. I don't know. I've just learned, I guess, where I've learned to be loved and fall in love, I've kind of learned to love myself. And I guess I've always appreciated the way I look because I always took care of like my teeth and my skin and my eyelashes. But it's literally just taking a step back and just really appreciating yourself by looking at a photo, like whether you're in your favourite outfit or if there's certain colours or if your makeup looks amazing or if you've got no makeup, just appreciating like the features that you have. Yeah, maybe I don't look like the supermodels on the runway, but one day someone that looks like me will be rocking their stuff on that runway, if it's me or if it's someone else.
Next slide, please. So that was Rochelle there, and she was on the Health Talk website, which I will speak to you a little bit more about soon. So the psychological impact of scarring and burn injuries and altered body image. So individuals with a visible difference are known to experience higher levels of psychological distress compared to the general population. This can include difficulties with anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and low self-esteem. During the initial stage of a burn injury specifically, the primary emphasis is, of course, placed on recuperating physically and the physical problems, dressing changes, skin grafts, all this kind of thing. And as wounds heal, the individual's physical state stabilizes and they may come to understand that their burn scars are permanent, leading to alterations within their appearance. Now, facing this change might elicit feelings of grief and diminished body image levels. In the work that I've done so far, there's a kind of theme of people not realizing just how severe a burn injury can be, but then also that it was lifelong. A lot of people, they kind of expected to have their burn and then they'd go to hospital and they thought they'd get, a couple of consultations, maybe some dressing changes, and then they thought that would be it. They never expected that they'd need weekly, monthly, annual appointments, and that it could be a lifelong journey. So the adjustment to living with an altered appearance involves two interconnected viewpoints. You've got the individual impact, which is how the individuals perceive themselves, and you've got the societal impact, which is how society perceives the individual. Next slide, please. Thank you. So factors influencing psychosocial impact. There are lots of different factors that can influence how someone who has been burnt will cope with their altered appearance. You could ask, can you predict how well someone will adjust to their new appearance? But the short answer is no, you can't predict it. But there are predictors which you can look out for, and it's important to note that there can be interplay between all these different factors that you see. For example, a person who experienced anxiety and depression before they were burnt is more likely to struggle with their appearance after they're burnt than someone who didn't. Another significant predictor of how well a person will manage appearance concerns after their burn is how highly they rated their appearance before they were burnt. In other words, if someone placed a lot of importance on their appearance before their burn, they may find it more challenging to adjust and cope with changes in their looks caused by the burn afterwards. This is because the contrast between their pre-burn appearance and how they looked and their understanding of beauty ideals and what you should look like and conventional beauty ideas is different to the reality that they're now living, and this can create more distress and difficulties in adapting to their new appearance. Age can also play a significant role on the psychological impact of appearance. Individuals who were burnt as children, for example, often show average to above average self-esteem and tend to possess normal to positive body image, suggesting that by and large they successfully adapt their appearance as they go from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. In terms of social support, being part of the burns community has also been found to make people feel less stigmatized, and this is especially true if they also have a good support network from their family and friends. This means that having a strong support network can help protect people from feeling judged or singled out or alienated because of their burns. Again, should be taken on a case-by-case basis because it can also evolve throughout the recovery process and through different life experiences such as life stages, dating, intimacy, going to university, having a baby, all this kind of things. I think it's important to note too, though, that coming to a place of acceptance or neutrality is okay too. Not everyone will love their scars or embrace them, but hopefully they will come to a point when they can view their scars more neutrally. I'm going to show you a clip now of India, who was burnt when she was 3 years old in an accident with a gas fire. She's speaking about her experiences of having a visible difference caused by burns. So next slide, please.
But I spent a lot of years just being body neutral, and to be honest, I was very happy. It didn't hold me back from what I was wearing and what I wanted to do. And I know that, as I said, I actually think it's a privilege that I had my scarring very young. I don't really know how I look without my scars, so I think it's been easier for me to reach that point of body positivity. But don't put yourself through the ringer because you don't absolutely love yourself. Like, it's not everyone, most people don't love themselves and love the way they look. But body neutrality is enough. I just don't want people to see their scars as like this enemy that they hate, it's just a part of you. It's like anything else. It's just your skin. It's skin deep. So there's so much more to you than that.
Next slide, please. So coping strategies and interventions. So as you all, I'm aware, already know, there are lots of different coping strategies and interventions which can be recommended to patients to help them manage their appearance concerns. So I know that some of you use the 3-2-1 method recommended by Changing Faces, but it's also important to signpost patients and their families to interventions which can help in the longer term to try and change their ways of thinking and to reframe negative thoughts. So, for example, as you're already aware, CBT and ACT can help people in the instance of appearance anxiety concerns. And so, first step, recommending these psychological therapies to patients, making them aware of their availability, who to speak to, and how they can access these. But we also have interventions which can be more on an individual level, can be done in the comfort of a person's home at their own pace. And one such thing will be health information sites such as Health Talk, which I'll speak about in a moment. So I'm sure if you're anything like me, as soon as you get a symptom or you start to feel a little bit unwell, there is a rush to Dr. Google and all these things will come up, and sometimes it's worst case scenario. There was a gap for this, and so we created the Health Talk Burn Injuries site, and it's an online information site based on shared experience, so people can access information about burn injuries, but there's also hundreds of other conditions on there in their own time, at their own pace. There's no login required or anything like that, and it's based upon shared experience. So people will be watching the videos, as you just have, of people who have also experienced burn injuries, talking about their experience of dressing changes, of skin grafts, of how they may have struggled with intimacy, their thoughts for the future, financial issues related to burn injuries. So I'll show you a video of that in a moment. And we also have peer support. So peer support is beneficial in the well-being of people who've been affected by burn injuries. Talking to a person who has experienced a similar event or is faced with the same challenges can increase empowerment. It can increase feelings of hope and motivation for the future, just to kind of be able to speak to someone who's been through something similar to yourself and be able to go, oh, so they've coped with it well. Perhaps this will be me in the future. And there are different ways that people can access this, and I will speak about this in a moment. So if we can have the next slide, please.
But I spent a lot of years just being body neutral, and to be honest, I was very happy.
Backwards.
This is the Health Talk homepage. It's a site where real-life experiences of health conditions are shared. We click here on Go to the A to Z. You'll see there are already a wide range of different health conditions on the site. Giving up smoking, epilepsy, cancer, life-changing injuries, and terminal illness, just to name a few. If we click here on burn injuries, we'll see the landing page. This contains an overview of the whole of the burn injuries site, an introduction video, and some first aid advice. You'll see down the left-hand side of the page, in bold, are the 5 themes identified from the analysis. Underneath them are the corresponding topic summaries. Essentially, these are sub-themes. I've clicked now on dealing with other people's reactions. There are bullet points about what this topic summary will cover. If we scroll down, you'll see a video still of Sinead, where she speaks about other people's reactions to her daughter being heavily bandaged. You'll see at the right-hand side of the video, a strapline of what the video is about, as well as Sinead's age and gender. You can also click See Text Version on each video or audio clip to see a full text transcription of the clip. Here is a video of India speaking about how she felt that people were entitled to know about why she had scars. I'm going to play you the first few moments of the video.
So I feel like people think, oh, because that person looks different and because I can see them, that means that I can then ask that person a question about their scars. But I think what people don't understand is you are asking someone about a very intense trauma that they may or may not be comfortable talking about.
So each other topic summary on the site is of a similar format to this one. Each topic summary will have video, audio, and text clips of people speaking about that topic. If we scroll up to the top, you'll see there are people's profiles. There are parents of children with burn injuries, people who sustained the burn injury as an adult, and people who sustained a burn injury as a child. I've clicked on people who sustained a burn as an adult. Here, you're met with a photo, the name, and a brief introduction of all the people who took part who sustained their burn as an adult. We click on Marilyn, for example. You're taken to her page, where you'll see a photo, brief outline, a background, and some more in-depth information about Marilyn's experiences. If we continue to scroll, we'll see all the video clips of Marilyn here in one place. If we scroll back to the top and we click Resources and Information, we're taken to a page which signposts users to specific burns charities and other avenues of support that they may find beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So just before I touch on the screen in front of us on YP Face It. That was healthtalk.org. So Health Talk was set up in 2001 by two general practitioners, and they both had personal experiences of cancer, and they couldn't find anywhere to find information that wasn't just being given to them by medical professionals. They wanted to listen and receive advice and know the stories of people who had also experienced cancer. So they set up the Health Talk website, and there's, as you saw there was so many conditions on there, but the most recent one is burn injuries that was part of my PhD. And the kind of thought process behind it was that perhaps you have someone who's been recently burned, or you've got a mum of a child who has been burned and she's up at night and she's worrying, and the thought would be that she can go into Google, she can go into the Health Talk website, and she can listen to other parents' experiences of having a child with a burn injury. She can listen to how they feel, what coping mechanisms they use, what their child's life has been like. So yeah, that's what we want for the site. We want it to be used. And so that was just a bit of an insight into it, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end, or you can email me about that. But moving on, for another thing that you could signpost is YP Face It and Face It at Home. So YP Face It is the young person's version of Face It, and it provides advice and support for anyone who has worries or is unhappy because they have a visible difference. So any kind of visible difference: birthmarks, cleft lip and palate, craniofacial conditions, burn injuries. There are 8 online sessions, and each session has a different exercise and activities and will take roughly an hour to complete. Users usually complete 1 online session a week. So Face It will allow users to test out social situations that they might find difficult whilst they're on the computer. So, for example, they can test out a situation such as going out in public or responding to people who stare or ask questions before they have to do it in real life. So this can increase their confidence of dealing with these anxiety-inducing situations on the computer, and then they can practice it for when they need to do it in real life. So YP Face It is similar, but is aimed at young people between 12 and 17. So we can go to the next slide, please. So we also have Dan's Fund for Burns. Now, I'm sure that you're aware of this already, but you might not be aware of the different things that they can offer. So they're quite well known, as well as their online weekly chat, which is moderated by either someone that has had a burn themselves and been trained, or by the charity representatives. They've also quite recently introduced something called the befriending service. Now, this is where a person who has sustained a burn quite a while ago is matched with a person who has sustained a burn more recently. They're matched on lots of different criteria, such as age, gender, area of the body that's been burned, the type of burn. There's lots of different criteria, hobbies, interests, all these different kind of things. So the befrienders, that's the people who have had the burn longer, have been trained to offer one-to-one support and guidance through their own shared experience and personal experience of having a burn via Zoom, Teams, phone call, and some of the ones that have been successful, they've even met up in person, and friendships have been formed. It is relatively new, but it is ongoing, and if it is something that you think patients you work with would benefit from, them, please recommend it. Dan's Fund also offer residential weekends, and they can offer financial help for things such as one lady needed a new bed that could, kind of electronic one that could lift, so she could have better mobility getting in and out of bed, and they do things like that. So next slide, please. So we also have the Children's Burns Trust, and they're similar to Dan's Fund, but whereas Dan's Fund are aimed at adults, these are aimed at children and families. They offer family weekends, they run awareness campaigns, they can aid grant funding, and they also run residential weekend for children with burns. So attending burn camps for children, like as a young burn survivor, is associated with improved social skills in adolescence. So again, if you work with families and children, this is something that I would really recommend. I've heard a lot of good things from people who've attended. Next one, please. And of course, you have local burn support groups within different NHS trusts. From the people I've spoken to, so for the Health Talk website, for example, I interviewed 36 people that have been affected by burns, and lots of them had used their local support groups. Sometimes in the initial stages of their recovery, they felt too nervous to attend the support groups, or they felt like they didn't belong. Maybe they felt that they weren't burnt enough, that these resources should be saved for people who are more desperate of help or more burnt or had been more impacted. However, when these support groups are used in conjunction with things like the Dance Fund online chat or the Health Talk website, people kind of use these online resources as a stepping stone until they feel ready to access the local burn support groups. They might find themselves more accepting of wanting to access help, and so you can kind of see how they're all connected, and how if you think of them as a pyramid, and you have step 1 Health Talk site, step 2 Dance Fund, and then you work your way up to local burn support groups or psychological help and therapies, you can see how they're all connected. Next one, please. So, take-home messages, and just to conclude, before I answer any questions that you have, my 3 main take-home messages would be that how a person manages their scars and appearance is completely individual and can depend on a multitude of factors such as age, gender, and any underlying concerns. Number 2, it's important to signpost patients to online support interventions that can be used as a stepping stone, and they can provide people with the tools and information to move forward in their recovery, in their own time, in the comfort of their own home. Some of them, it's like the Health Talk one is 24/7, there's no account needed. It can be quite anonymous as well, depending on how someone feels about accessing support. And finally, peer support can be crucial aspects of recovery from burn injuries, and speaking to other people who've experienced similar things can create a sense of community and foster hope and motivation for the future. So yeah, if we can move on to the next one, please. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm sorry again, I got a bit flustered at the beginning because I was running late. I've left on the screen some resources which you might like to take note of, and also my contact details should you have any questions related to anything I've said today. If you are interested, just before I go, I will soon be sending out information packs to all different NHS trusts with information about the Health Talk site I've spoken about. So these will have business cards, leaflets, posters, email templates. So if you would like to receive these, please contact me or pop your email in the chat and I'll make a note of it. But yeah, I hope you found it useful and interesting. I'm sorry it was a little bit rushed, and thank you again.
Thank you, Christia. That is fantastic. And honestly, please don't apologise, because it hasn't impacted at all on the session. It brings it back to me, really. You know, when you started off, Claire, first thing this morning around the World War II injured soldiers and the town that didn't stare, and the work around that, and how maybe we've evolved in not a particularly good way. The trolling and the awful stories you hear about people with scarring. I know, to think of one of our children's sessions, we had a clinical psychologist talking about sort of the work that they do. But I think those services are few and far between. And if it wasn't for these charities, I think people would be stuck really in terms of having to deal with that psychological impact. And I'm really interested in the Centre for Appearance Research. You know, it's something that you just would never have heard of years ago. So it's fantastic that that facility is available, isn't it?
I think as well, with wounds on the body, we care for people with wounds all over, and it's not just the wounds, like you said, Christia, that you can visually see is how that person interprets it. So I think this information that you've got to share with Society of Tissue Viability, and I'm sure we can really help you spread that message, because I've just been messaging one of my colleagues to say, or maybe we should get some like credit card size leaflets to hand out to people with the details and the websites, because we're rushed in nursing a lot of the time. We all are, but we know people are struggling. It'd be really nice to give them that resource that they can access, you know, and have that kind of ongoing support, because I know access to psychology services is tricky if you're not part of a specialist trauma centre or a burn centre. So I've really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
You're
There's
welcome.
a comment here from Michelle. She works in a mental health NHS trust, and self-harm wounds is a massive part of their work, and they think this site is invaluable to the treatment for their patients. And certainly, you know, Claire says about spreading the message of health talk and the work the others organisations that can support people. We're more than happy on our Society of Tissue Viability website to promote that as well. So do keep in touch with Pink, and we can do that. I think you know, we it's interesting you saying around the more that a person thinks about their appearance, and I think we have become a society, maybe a generational thing, where there is such, whether it's peer pressure, it is all that social media about what you should look like, and that's why possibly things are worse. And it's not just females, is it? You know, we have men now very sort of tuned into their appearance, but as you said, it's not just facial, it's, you know, if they're on the beach and they had scarring, how people are dealing with that. So it's fantastic that these organizations are around to support people. So to try and keep on time a bit, I really thank you so much for that presentation. There's lots of email addresses gone in there. You might regret saying that. But thanks ever so much. And I know that it's a conversation we'll continue to have and raise awareness of this. So thanks again.